not know me, my name is Isabel McLemore, or Belle is much easier. I'm the new Senior Director of Communications at USA Swimming. I've been here for about 10 months now, so this is my very first convention. I've had a really, really wonderful week. Everyone's been incredibly hospitable. I actually met a lovely young woman who was celebrating her 43rd convention. I think that deserves an incredible round of applause. So it's my pleasure this morning to host our first ever executive panel at USA Swimming. I think you likely know most of the folks up here. We've decided to do it a little bit differently this year. I think we've got a new team in place. I'll give you the opportunity to get to know some folks that work with Tim, and I think are doing a lot of great things in the office in Colorado Springs. So what I'll do is maybe I'll start here. To my immediate left, we've got Chief Marketing Officer Matt Farrell. Welcome, Matt. Followed by our National Team Managing Director, Lindsay Mintenko. And certainly a man who needs no introduction, but I will do it anyways, our President and Chief Operating Officer, Chief Executive Officer, Tim Hinchey. To his left is our General Counsel and Vice President of Business Affairs, Lucinda Mix-Roberts. And last but not least, our Chief Operating Officer, Mike Unger. So I'd like to thank everybody who submitted questions this week. I think we tried to make it interactive. We wanted to hear from you. We wanted to know what you wanted to hear, what you'd like us to address, things that you were wondering about. So those have been incorporated into the questions today and will be addressed by the panel as we go along. I think one of the questions that has come up, and I think Tim is more than happy to, actually, we'll let you introduce the panel.
Okay. Actually, I just want to make a few thank yous. This is my second convention, so I have a ways to go to get to 43, but hopefully that happens. But I think we need to recognize and thank the officers for the United States Aquatic Sports, and especially Steve McFarland and Elaine Cox and all the hard work they've done to make this a great convention. So a round of applause, please. In addition to that, well-deserved award winner last night, the legendary Mary Jo Swally. I'd like to thank Mary Jo and our staff liaison, Gina Menseh, because it was really the volunteer task force that changed our convention a little bit this year and added some different content. And I think all of us, I'd like to think all of us enjoyed Rashad Tabakawala and his incredible keynote speech this week, changing the format, having a panel, trying to make it more interactive. And I'd certainly like to thank that task force for the work they've done this week as well. And most importantly, I want to thank everybody here, athletes, coaches, officials, volunteers. This is why we do this. This is why we're here. Our sport is the greatest sport. Not just in the movement and the NGB families, but I think it's the greatest sport in the world. And the sea of blue today, the support you all give is incredibly appreciated by us, your staff. We're here, we're honored to serve you. So I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to be together and to answer some questions and hopefully give you some excitement to look forward to. So again, applause for yourselves, please. Great job. And with that, I'll kick it back to you, I guess.
Yeah. A week or so ago, we released the State of the Sport in digital form, and hopefully everybody in the room has had a chance to read it. As part of the State of the Sport, we included what we have created termed the swimming pyramid. There have been some questions that have come up about that. So if you look over to the video boards, that is an example of the pyramid we've referenced. And so maybe, Tim, maybe you can speak to the pyramid and just expand on your vision of swimming in the U.S.
Sure. Well, this started, a couple of months into my job. I wanted to get a sense. I'm a visual person. Many of you know my background is in commercial marketing, and I think a lot of times I like to see what my task is in front of me. And so, and as the staff knows, I'm a fan of pyramids, so this is where that kind of started from. The first pyramid looked a little bit like this. So kind of my less than artistic version was where we started. And as you can see all the notes in writing, we've had a lot of discussion and interaction about, what do we represent at USA Swimming? Who's our key priorities? Can we make other influence decisions in support of the sport? I want to say a couple months ago, Lindsay invited me to speak at the National Coaches Seminar. We had 100 coaches, and that's where I kind of debuted it publicly and got their opinions. We had a ton of feedback. So we had good feedback, some feedback they'd like us to change, but it was a good place for us to start. We took that back to the staff and we sat around with sport development, Mike's team, Lindsay's national team. We had MJ in diversity and inclusion. We had a group of us. And then the pyramid went from my very layman's version to a more sophisticated version. Again, this is version 3.0, very excited about it. But we're looking for more input, which is why we sent it out to begin with. But for us, and I know that Mike and Lindsay both want to speak to sections of this because they own sections of this, the blue sections are our priorities. That is our current remit at USA Swimming that represents our mission. It starts with the clubs and our athletes and our coaches and what we're doing. And certainly you just heard a wonderful presentation from our foundation, which we're very proud of. So the base of the pyramid, water safety, again, that's another important place that we have a positive influence on. But I got to be honest, my altruistic view, representing this badge on my lapel and representing all of you, I feel like we should represent and positively influence and possibly contribute to all levels of swimming in our country. We're not going to take away from our priorities. We know what those are, and I think this staff and this group of volunteers continues to do an unbelievable job growing our sport at all levels and all facets, and that's exciting. But we can get better. We can do more. Our membership is down, so we need to be focusing on what levels can help us grow our membership. Where are places we can take our swimmers? The chance for me to be at the Athlete Leadership Conference this year in Houston was one of my favorite things this year, because it was a group of individuals that may or may not get to the highest levels of swimming, but they love swimming. We all love swimming. And it was great to see those individuals and excited because they want to contribute to swimming. So for us, this is kind of my visual representation and now our visual representation of what we think our sport is and what those levels look like. And again, it's up for more input. We want more input. But again, I think if we can put this on paper, have a roadmap for what we should be doing, where we should be going, where we can influence, that's kind of what I feel like. And again, I'll turn it to Mike or Lindsay if you guys want to add to your sections of it.
I would just add one thing. The areas in blue are where we have the most impact and can impact. And certainly the opportunities, I think most of the people in the room understand and know that summer league swimming is grassroots to the nth degree. And it's really where we can have tremendous impact as well, but we have had a hard time in reaching those people. The clubs have can reach locally to get to those leagues, but we are over the next couple of years going to start looking even more closely at reaching down further and trying to help membership. We heard the numbers down to about 2%, but that's, there's a goal there. There's a challenge there for us to raise that.
I'll just add that, obviously I get the opportunity to work with the top half of the pyramid, but the national team division at USA Swimming headquarters understands that we need to influence the entire pyramid, and I think that's the most exciting thing for us is that we don't necessarily get to pick the people we work with, but we do know that those people that we work with influence everything we do at USA Swimming, and so we're really looking forward to working with other divisions and the clubs, the coaches, the athletes to influence the sport of swimming throughout the United States.
And I would offer just one example perhaps, and Matt and I on one of our sponsorship calls recently where we're close, knock on wood if I could, on having, in addition to the Goldfish team that is sponsoring the foundation, our first major retail swim school chain wants to be a sponsor of USA Swimming. And when we were doing our discovery meetings and going back and forth on why we should be working together, we learned that in one of their locations, they gave about 35,000 lessons in one region, and they did not hand one piece of information or one communication to where they go next to keep swimming. Not one. So huge opportunity for us to influence that group, and that's why we have kind of swim schools on there too, because that's an area that we think we can positively influence.
Great. I mean, certainly a theme that we've heard here, I think, is membership. And we heard it this morning. We've heard it again to start off the panel. We actually already have something underway in what I think a lot of people see as a unique initiative and a unique entry into the membership category. We recently launched Flex, or its many variations across the country. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what has the reception been like to the Flex membership and what are we seeing early on?
Yes. So I think all of you know, it was voted on last year and passed that the Flex membership goes into effect this 2019 year, and September 1 was our first date. We don't know the results yet because the first month of membership closes tomorrow, and we'll find out early next week what those numbers look like. But I think this is a great opportunity for clubs and coaches to find a different way of attracting athletes into the sport, and creative ways. They can sort of do what they want. And I think we looked at the membership numbers. We know that they're down, as we all mentioned before, but it's a way for clubs to introduce kids to swimming and bring them into their programs that will really hopefully grow long term. We may have to tweak it after a year or 2 or 3. We don't know. We're not there yet. And this was a big effort over this last year to do this. There was a great number of, there's IT work, there's implementation work, there's working with clubs. I think we have 47 LSCs that are taking advantage of this. There was a whole marketing campaign, which Matt should probably speak to more than I can, but there was a really concerted effort from entire staff and volunteer world to really implement this program.
Yeah, I would just jump in and add on that real quick. Out of the many stats we looked at in this whole program, one of the most startling in a good way was what we found that we took a poll of the 2016 U.S. Olympic swim team, and 83% of those athletes participated in another sport in addition to swimming growing up. And so we took that and consumer research and feedback from you to really bring that together in a campaign that we hope was fun, we hope is making people think about swimming in a different way. Great feature in the Wall Street Journal that Bell helped put together. The Aspen Institute has come in full force supporting what we're trying to do from a messaging standpoint. So we hope it's just the beginning of of talking about swimming in a different way and getting those people in the entry level and then moving them up through that pyramid that we just talked about.
I just have a self-serving comment. My twin sons just started as Flex members and they love it. So.
2, all right.
Doing my part.
2 more.
One of the things I think we can all agree on is that seeing those athletes, those Olympians, those high-level competitors compete at their best is one of our most effective marketing tools. I mean, that is really what gets people excited about the sport. And so this summer, halfway through the quad, the team headed to Tokyo, competed at the Pan Pacific Championships. What can you tell us a bit about what the athletes learned this summer and what we're going to do moving forward?
Absolutely. I think the most important thing to note is this is our first of 4 trips to Asia in the next 4 years, all the way through 2021. The World Championships will be in Japan in 2021. So it was a great learning experience. The athletes performed wonderfully, won 45 medals, but should do more. And I think that that's what we've learned from that, is that there was an opportunity for us to earn more medals. And what I really appreciated from the athletes' perspective was that how hard the conditions were. We showed up, we didn't know really what to expect. The conditions were hard. There were situations that were not anticipated, and the athletes pulled through, and they swam faster, and they got better every single time they got into the water in every single session. When we came back from that competition, we had a meeting with the steering committee, and they have already decided to implement some changes as we go forward to 2019 and 2020 as well. And so those plans are in place to help our athletes perform better when we go back to Asia in 19, when we go back to Asia in 20, and then again in 2021. So in conjunction with the steering committee, the national team division has been able to change some of the plans that we had set, so we can focus and make sure our athletes are put in the best position to swim the best that they can in Asia in the next 3 years.
Great. And I think one of the things we did learn as well is obviously competing in Asia, different time zones, different change. So how do we engage with everybody back home? How do you get fans watching that, fans excited about it? And so I think we introduced a few new initiatives. We have a lot of great things coming out of production. So maybe we can talk a bit, how are we reaching the different audiences, especially given maybe a different time zone or somewhere in the world?
Yeah, just last week at NBC gave a presentation, and they had a stat that has just stuck with me, that they expect between now and the Tokyo Olympics in 2020 a 14% erosion in television viewing. And that, while I think certainly had our attention before that, but certainly should have our attention as a governing body and as a sport, that doesn't mean those people are going away. It means they're going to connected TVs like Roku, they're going to their tablet, they're going to their phone, they're just consuming in different ways. And so USA Swimming's view on that is USA Swimming Productions, a group that we've just started, still in its early stages, is the backbone of that. And how do we create more content, certainly cover our events in a bigger and better way, but get beyond about the people of the sport and beyond what I call who touched the wall first content, and talk about swimming as a lifestyle and the people of the sport. And then what do we do with that? We certainly, at least in my opinion, do a good job with that now, digital, social, but how do we get to those connected TVs? How do we syndicate content to your team websites? So both content and data, performance data from swims, and really just increase the syndication, if you will, of where that content goes and how people consume it. The living room is still intact, but it's changing dramatically, and we almost have to think of ourselves as a bit of a media company as well, and how we distribute content and where we're getting it to where people are. And so that's really the key. And then everything else plugs in from there. The public relations, communications, website, splash magazines, digital versions of that, all comes to that of how are we getting it to where people are on the go.
Right. You touched on NBC there. We touched on some great things coming down the way. What are you seeing from sponsor engagement and people getting excited about all these changes heading into the game?
Yeah, I mean, to be candid, post Rio in 2017 was a very tough sponsorship landscape. We have phenomenal partners, and my goal is to trash this banner and reprint it with other partners on there before this time next year. But 2017 and early 2018 were a tough go. I'm personally starting to see the shift in the activity, as Tim mentioned, in retail, in Learn to Swim. We have a big one to renew with Phillips 66. You know, I'm starting to see the activity both within the industry and outside of it. And I think even early 2019, we're going to be celebrating a lot of renewals and new partnerships because I'm just starting to see it come back. And the reason is we focus on the quality of the swimming community as opposed to the quantity of it, and that's our pitch. And I think even within a period of a few months, you're going to see a major shift in positivity in the sponsorship landscape for USA Swimming.
Great. I think internally, so externally, I'm working with partners and those in the community. Internally, we've also made some great additions and some change to the organization. So I know, Mike, there's been 2 major hires this year in the sport development and technical business unit. So obviously John Urbanchek, who I believe is here somewhere, and Joel Shinnefield, who we just recently announced this week. Maybe talk a little bit about these 2 significant hires and how they complement your team.
Yes, both have obviously, John was hired over the summer as the national team technical advisor. I think a lot of you know John, 6 Olympic teams that he's coached, US teams that he's coached, and one of the most respected coaches in the US, if not the entire world, and one of the most successful. Our national team group, led by Lindsay as the managing director, we were looking for a little bit more support from a coach side. The national team director in the past was always a veteran coach. And so we have gone a different direction, and Lindsay is a wonderful leader for the national team, but to give a little bit more support from that coach side. So John does that. He's already out in the field. We saw some of the results at the Pan Pacs in Tokyo, and we know how other coaches and athletes feel about John, and they have, and respect, and our staff as well. So that's been a very positive thing. The second hire, Joel Shinnefield, just earlier this week. I know that Joel is in the room, and I got a chance to work with Joel. He's now going to be the managing director for sports development. I got a chance to work with Joel very closely over the last 4 or 5 years in his role as the executive director of the College Swim Coaches Association. That organization, the CSCAA, in the past, they were focused on a lot more things just for college. Academic All-American and other things like that. Their role there has expanded greatly, and one of the most challenging things we have in this country are the elimination of college swim programs. That dream for young athletes and their parents, actually, to get a college scholarship is a huge, huge incentive for people to stay in this sport, and it helps us. It helps us all the way through that entire pyramid, and ultimately to the national team level. So bringing college programs and saving college programs, which is what Joel's focus has been, and he's done an extraordinary job at that. We think working in our sport development group, and by the way, we did change the title from club development to sport development. It was sport development when I started back in 2000 working in that area. It was sport development. It changed in the early 2000s to club. We've changed it back. There is one. We're still supportive of clubs, obviously, but there is one reason. From a diversity and inclusion standpoint, the word club is seen as exclusionary, and so we thought, we are sport. We'd like to make that change. So that's what we did. If people have questions about that, I'd be happy to talk about it afterwards as well. But Joel really is going to come in. He's going to help lead that group, working with MJ Truex, with Tom Avicius, who has done a great job over the last 6 months. And I think that his focus and energy and thoroughness, which is what he showed from the CSCAA, will come out greatly here at USA Swimming. And I'd finish by saying, in just the last 2 or 3 days, I've seen him in multiple meetings out in the hall here, meeting with coaches and taking their pulse. So I think that's been a really good indication.
Great. I think along the lines of reorganization and some realignment that we've seen internally, there's a woman here on stage who oversees a lot of the behind the scenes. I think what really keeps the organization moving. So we saw the development and the creation of the business affairs unit, which Lucinda heads up. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what sits in that unit and what you oversee within the organization.
Absolutely. As you indicated, business affairs was created the first of the year, and it really is by design a behind the scenes business unit that is intended to support and enhance the operations of what everyone else here on stage, at staff, back at headquarters and in the room are seeking to accomplish. It encompasses all of the fun stuff like legal, human resources, risk management, IT, office management. Most recently had the addition of government relations and safe sport as well. And so I often steal a line from the U.S. Olympic Committee in describing sort of the goal of business affairs. They have a business operations unit that is similarly comprised, and the USOC says, you know, we're the team behind the team. And so their business ops or our business affairs says, then we're the team behind the team behind the team. And so really looking to do what we can to enhance the organization's goals and aspirations.
And I would certainly be remiss if I didn't touch on, I think, one of the very important pieces of your unit, but the safe sport efforts and initiatives. 2018 is very transformative. I think that has brought that up to light. How has our vision or how has our goals changed with regards to safe sport?
You know, I don't think that our goals have changed necessarily. Our ultimate goal, of course, is to provide a safe and healthy environment for all of our members, and most especially our athletes. Some of the value of safe sport becoming a part of business affairs is, as I just mentioned, the goal of business affairs is to support the endeavors of the organization. And so with those consolidated resources, we are very well positioned to consistently put safe sport at the top of the list in terms of who is getting that IT support or whatever support may be required. It has, to a lot of extent, been a tough year, personally, professionally, and the like for a lot of us that work in safe sport. I am also most encouraged and enthusiastic to work in that space going forward as we recommit ourselves day after day after day to taking all of the steps that we can, both big and small, to continue to make this a top priority of the organization.
And I would just jump in. It has been a different year. It's been a difficult year in a lot of circumstances. And I think we've spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C., and it wasn't necessarily something on my initial bucket list was to testify in front of Congress. But I can tell you without reservation, it's one of the best experiences I've had to represent this organization and really be very, very clear and articulate as it relates to our position when it comes to safe sport, and that we have zero tolerance, and we're going to do everything possible to make sure that our athletes are safe. And really, we need help from everyone here to do that. Again, I can go up there and say those things, but we have to come together as an organization to ensure it's our top priority. And I can tell you that sitting in the Safe Sport Education Committee meeting this week, and that room was jammed and had to get extra chairs, and George, who's one of our unbelievable volunteer leaders of that continues to make it a priority, has inspired me to become even more involved and more knowledgeable about what we should be doing. And even in that room and listening to our athletes, again, this organization and my predecessor in particular and the group of what we learned and the organization, the people here that already do so much for safe sport know that we respect and appreciate it. But like in any endeavor, we can do more and we can do better. And so I heard that this week, and it was super compelling, and just some of the opportunities for us to get better. And again, one of those opportunities, again, goes back to this audience. We have a goal to have a safe sport coordinator at every single one of our now 3,033 clubs, I believe was the number I heard this morning. And right now we have less than 400. So I ask all of you that are involved in your home clubs, if there's someone that can help us be part of that network, part of that positive message going forward, is important. I'd also like to take one more remark here and thank Amy Hoppenrath yesterday. If you had a chance to listen to the Meet the Candidates yesterday, see something, say something. That was her message, and I can't say it any better than that.
Great. And I think we've gotten a lot of really good feedback. I know you've had the chance to meet face-to-face with survivors. We've sat down with national team athletes. We've gotten their perspective. We've heard directly from them. One of the themes that we've seen is health and wellness, an overall holistic view of health and wellness for the athletes. Is there anything your group, Mike, that you are doing to sort of further develop in that area, programs that might be coming out?
We have talked about that internally. Lindsay and I have had many conversations about health and wellness of athletes in particular. It's become, the stigma is off, fortunately, and athletes can speak about challenges that they have faced, applaud. There's a number of them, but Allison Schmidt was really the first one that, along with Michael Phelps, came out to really talk about that and make it a public statements about what they've gone through, how difficult that's been. Being an athlete in the sport is not easy. It's a wonderful sport, but it does bring challenges, especially at athletes at those levels. And so for them to be able to speak about that publicly is fantastic. We've talked about that internally. We also have started, and this came out at the national team coaches meeting, but coaches have started talking about coach wellness. What a difficult lifestyle it can be. The hours of the day are tough. They're working all the weekends. They got to take care of themselves. And athlete wellness, coach wellness is on our radar, and we're making it a priority.
Yeah, I would just add, Val, that it's been a priority in the national team division. We've had a couple of workshops here at convention, mental health workshops. We have a wonderful task force that's been working with Keenan Robinson in the national team division and former national team athletes, and I've been able to reach out to a lot of my former teammates who, when I was an athlete, didn't necessarily know that they were going through what they were going through. And I hope being able to start the conversation and being able to talk about mental health a lot more and make it okay to talk about in front of people is I want to get past that stigma. I want to make sure that people are comfortable talking about the topic. And we're in our division are probably going to hire somebody in the national team division to talk about wellness, coach wellness, athlete wellness, and not just as it relates to mental health, but also as it relates to what we call change management, when athletes are making the change between being a high school swimmer and a college swimmer, when they're making the change between being a college swimmer and a professional swimmer and a professional, getting a real job. And so I think that those are all things that we're trying to wrap our head around, and what this job looks like and how we can help and support athletes, not just when they're trying to perform to be on the medal stand, but afterwards as well.
So we're saying, it is a full slate of services, because we're really talking about outside of the pool on the dry side, as well as obviously where everybody's specialty lies here, but in the pool. We saw some efforts there this year as well. I think you hosted the first ever Butterfly Summit. Right. So again, that theme of change, of being innovative, of offering our athletes new products and services. Is there anything else that might be coming down the pipeline of what would be rolling out for the athletes?
Sure. Well, I think that the cool thing about the Butterfly Revolution is that it's not over, and we still want to help all butterflyers, out there, if there are any butterflyers out there, I went to practice this morning, and they're like, this is a butterfly lane. I'm like, I'm not going to that one. I'm going to go down to this lane over here. But I think that it's a revolution. It's something that we want to focus on, continue to focus on, not just in the national team division, but throughout USA Swimming. And I wrote down some stats, so I'm going to try not to get this wrong, but where it came from was in 2017, between the World Championships and the World Junior Championships, out of 16 spots in the finals in butterfly events, we had 6. And in breaststroke events, we had 16. And I think in the mid-distance, we had 11. You know, so we were just showing that we needed to put a little bit more emphasis on butterfly. We did have a wonderful summit with Coach Troy, Coach McKeever, and Coach Bowman up at the Olympic Training Center. We had national team alumni like Mary T., Camille Adams, Ian Crocker come talk to our athletes, and it was fantastic. And doing butterfly at altitude right when you arrive is a little bit of a lesson that we learned would have been the best thing to do, but it was something that the athletes really thrived on. We got wonderful feedback. We saw Haley Flickinger this summer win an international medal, her first international medal on the 200 fly, as well as Zach Harding. So we're working forward on progressing in butterfly, but also one of the things we're focusing on the national team level is relay starts. You know, when we're very fortunate in university that our athletes get to swim a lot of relays. When you become a professional athlete, you don't get to do that very much. So we've definitely seen, on the international stage, our relay starts are the worst. And so we're working on trying to improve on those as we get ready for the World Championships and all our international competitions next year.
And we need to, because we will be in the pool quite a bit next summer.
Yes.
A lot of events coming up in 2019. Maybe talk us through what does next summer look like, and how many athletes are we going to be engaging in those competitions?
The athlete number is huge. We have, I think it's going to be over 130 athletes just in the World Championships, World University Games, and Pan American Games. There'll be about 130 athletes that'll get an opportunity to compete internationally next summer. I think our biggest competition next summer is our Open Water World Championships. We could come away from Open Water World Championships with our first Olympians, and that's a pretty exciting thing to say in 2019. You know, we don't get to do that in the sport of swimming very much. So that's going to be a big focus for us, is making sure that our open water athletes are getting what they need to be able to put 4 athletes on the Olympic team at the end of the summer. And we've never put 4 athletes on the Olympic team. No country has, actually, based on the selection procedures for the Olympic Games. So that's a big priority for us. We also have the World Junior Championships next summer. So there's a lot of moving pieces between basically, I guess it would be June and August. We have, I think, 4 or 5 competitions next summer. So it's going to be great. But the opportunity to get our athletes to compete internationally, so when they go to the Olympic Games or get the opportunity to go to the Olympic Games in 2020, they're ready for that international stage. It's a little bit different than swimming on the domestic stage. I think in 2016, I think about 85% of our athletes that were on the Olympic team swam internationally the year previous. So it's a huge opportunity for them, and to get that exposure is very beneficial.
Great. And I hope everyone this week, obviously we laid out a very clear path for the next 2 years, whether it's next summer or through to the trials with releasing the time standards earlier this week. So on the pool side, clear path to Tokyo 2020. Sort of again on the dry side, and from a governance perspective, following this fabulous panel, which I'm sure you're all very excited to get to, is the election of our new board of directors. So with the new governance structure, how do you see that changing, or how is that going to work with staff at USA Swimming?
Sure. So if you start with the premise that the governance changes are intended to encourage the board to be more strategic, forward-looking, policy-oriented, and the like, right, they did have an operational function that will now be the responsibility of staff to lead. I think perhaps the most notable example of that is the operational committees reporting to Tim through staff, although obviously will continue to be made up of volunteer leadership and work closely hand in hand. What I think is perhaps less apparent is the sort of inspiration that the changes are giving to us back at headquarters in terms of how we conduct our business. USA Swimming has been very successful for a number of decades and perhaps hasn't been given reason to change because of that. And now we are realizing that even though we have done things very well with respect to our board leadership and governance otherwise, that the opportunity to modernize and professionalize will only exceed our capabilities and push us forward. And so although it hasn't been a directive by any stretch, I think we are inspired by that. One example that comes out of business affairs is we have a phenomenal IT group, and they have been developing custom technology solutions for the organization for years and years and years, things like swims. So that will continue, but we're also now having the conversations of sort of what are the off-the-shelf technology solutions that we can use to, again, modernize and professionalize and increase the efficiency of our operations internal to USA Swimming. And had we not been experiencing so much change from the very top all the way throughout the organization, I don't know that we necessarily would have been pushed to consider that, and I am incredibly confident that we will be better for it.
Great. So I think before we leave you, maybe we can just go down our list of panelists and just what are you looking forward to the most in the coming months and year?
Starting here?
Sure.
Okay.
Starting with Mike.
Well, I think that for me personally, I didn't work, I started at USA Swimming many years ago working on the technical side. I didn't, for many years, didn't work on the technical side, and I'm back on the technical side again. So I am most excited to work with the people that are passionate about the sport, coaches, athletes, our staff. Obviously, we talked about some of our new staff earlier, and I think those next 2 years, we have a lot to do. There's a lot of work on the plate. And then maybe one more personal thing, I always love working on Olympic trials, and I'm about to work on, I think it's my 7th, and in Omaha in 2020, and those are such rewarding times to be actually get your hands dirty as well on working on a project like that. So that's what I would say.
Great.
Abuse prevention and our Safe Sport program. We have had a phenomenal program for 8 years. We have had and continue to have phenomenal volunteer and staff leadership, and I am genuinely very excited to see, despite a strong foundation, how much progress we can continue to make to ensure, again, that those within our membership have a safe and positive experience.
I think for me, the fact that we could have some Olympians by the end of the year, I'm super excited about that. I think going to the Olympic Games is obviously one of the most highlights of my job, and being able to help athletes reach their Olympic dreams. And so by the end of the year, by this time next year, we could have 4 Olympians, and I'm super excited about that.
Great.
I think it's also dealing with change, but knowing that we have the lineup of Tokyo, Paris, LA. I can walk into a corporate office and talk about a 10-year deal and not get laughed at, and just and have a legitimate conversation of what the next 10 years of the sport, especially in the U.S., look like from a commercial standpoint, everything from content distribution to sponsorship to licensing. I think it's just a clear fairway ahead for what we have as a sport.
Well, for me, I've got 2 things. First and foremost, and hopefully this was a little visual for you all, but I am extremely excited to get into my year 2 with the people that are sitting around me right now. We have an incredibly talented organization, top to bottom, at headquarters you should be very proud of. These people are committed, from Kathy Durance, who right now I think is leader in the clubhouse with 34, 35 years, 36 years, Kathy, sorry. To people that have only been around a little bit, like Mike for 25 years. But this staff, this group is inspiring for me every day, and we are here to serve you. So our mantra of servant leadership is going to be loud and clear as we go forward. But my second thing is that we're missing one member of my strategy team today. So I'd ask him to come here for a minute and please stand. He hates this. He's already been recognized twice, but I am going to unfortunately miss the incredible work that Jim Harvey's done as our CFO, and please all recognize him with me.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Hopefully it was informative, and hopefully we'll have a few more of these down the road. I will hand it off to Jim, I believe. Thank you,
everybody.